Okay guys, so today on the Spotted Painter we're going to talk about rust weathering. What do we mean? Well, we mean, what if your guy has a shiny new suit of armor, but he's been in a dungeon for a while? Well, that doesn't really make sense. He's probably, not kept it quite up to standards. Or maybe he's a big giant robot and he's been sitting out in a field for a while. Maybe you're playing Gaslands and you're wanting to really weather those old cars. Okay, so there's a lot of good reasons for weathering. So we're going to cover three main topics that, if you don't take anything else away, these are the three topics that I want you to remember. One, you need to use a variety of colors. These are colors that we have laid out right here. I will show you each of them in more detail. You don't have to use these. These are just the ones that I happen to like. But you need to stay in kind of the earth tones. You want those rust-colored reds, so to speak, some yellows, some darker colors to represent dirt. You're trying to show that this thing's been sitting out there for a while and has accumulated all sorts of stuff. Okay, number two, you're going to stipple it on. You're going to take an old beat up brush like this, and we're just going to stipple this on. Okay, we're going to be real gentle with it. We're not looking for deep brush strokes here, guys. That's a good way to ruin this. Okay, and number three, sometimes less is more when you're doing this. It is really, really easy to go overboard with this. I'm probably guilty of that more often than not, just because I really like the effect. I think it looks super cool most of the time. So sometimes less is more. If you get, three of these paints, or maybe you get four of these or something, and you decide, that's really cool, that's all I want to do, then call it quit. If you do all of these, but you do them in really small areas, that's good too. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and I've got a base. I've done a little bit on the base here to kind of show you the effect we're going for. Hopefully I can replicate it again, and then we'll go at it. So, yep. Alrighty. So you can see we've kind of put a little rust dot on here. And, to me, that looks pretty rusty. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to start working our way through some of these paints. This is Vallejo Model Air Rust. So one thing that I like about this particular paint is it's super, super matte. Like, I don't like it when rust looks shiny, even though sometimes I think it does in real life. If you look at pictures, sometimes it's got that sheen. It just doesn't look right to me. So we're taking, and we're gonna be stippling. So we're getting some of it off here, but we're not wiping all of it off here. And then we're just gonna take, I'm trying to get so you can see here. And we're just gonna be doing some of this. Okay, so we're just going to lay that down there. This is one thing too where you really don't want to rinse your brush out too much. If you rinse your brush out too much, everything's going to come out super wet, and we're looking for a little bit of blending. This is Typhus Corrosion by Citadel. I'm not a huge Citadel fan. I think the two paints that you see on my desk right now are probably the only two that I have, but I like this one because it's easy. We need some kind of dirt, earthy color, and we need some kind of sandy texture, because we don't want something that all looks smooth. Okay, so this adds a little bit of texture and gives us a little bit of the color that we need. So it's got just a little bit of grit and sand in it. If you have some of the Vallejo texture pastes, they can work well too. What I would probably do with those is put those down first and just kind of stipple them on. We're going to take that, just going to touch our brush. This is one where it's real easy to go overboard on too here. I would probably put any of the Vallejo stuff down first, and we're just going to create little bits of texture here. Okay. So right now that doesn't look like a whole lot. It really doesn't read that rusty, and that's okay. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, I used to think that the order mattered a lot here. It does to some degree. You get slightly different effects depending on the order that you do it. It doesn't matter a whole lot. I don't think I've done any order of these that I haven't thought, actually, that looks pretty good. Okay. So this is one, I probably wiped a little too much off. This is a Citadel Dry Paint. I'm not super in love with this one. This might be my least favorite of these. I have a P3 like neon orange, I think, that would work really well, that I probably just need to break out and try. So we're going to take, and we're just going to hit it with this. You can see we don't want to cover everything. We're just looking to add some textures like that. Okay. After you use this paint, I do recommend rinse out your brush. Otherwise, it will absolutely ruin the rest of it. It will be all like neon orange. Okay. So then we're going to take, this is Secret Weapons Flesh Wash. This is probably the weirdest one. Somebody's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. So this is a little yellow and a little green. Okay. I like to think of this as bringing in the outside. This is the earth element here where we've kind of, you know, taken the pollens and the leaves and all that kind of stuff. And we're kind of adding some of those in. And I find that if I skip this, it really doesn't do as well. Okay, so we're just adding some of that in. Okay. All right, this next one, this is, if there's a secret weapon here, it's probably this. This, guys, is rust. That's what it is. This is lab grade ferrous oxide. So yeah, this is actual ground up, super fine rust. This is cheaper than buying rust pigment powder in my experience. This is only a couple of bucks on eBay. And we're gonna take, and we're just gonna put this on dry, okay? You can also put it on wet. We're just gonna put it on here, and we're just gonna, there we go. We're just gonna do that, okay? And you can see this adds a lot of texture, okay? Alrighty. So we're just working our way through. This is Vallejo Rust Wash. Okay, this is another one that I really like. So it's one that if I was only going to do one, it would probably be this one. If I was going to do two, it would probably be this and actual rust. I think those make pretty effective combinations. Okay, so we're going to take some of this rust wash, and again, we're going to dab it off on here. Okay. Now, since we have already put the actual rust powder here, we're going to pick up a little bit of that when we do this. That's okay. The other thing that this is going to do is kind of set some of that a little bit. And what we want to do is kind of just dab this all over. Okay. So you can see now we have this real rich rust color. It's got a lot of natural variation. We probably, in this particular example, could have covered some of our Typhus Corrosion more, but we're working on a larger area. So we do have a lot of great natural variation, and I can tell you in person, this looks straight up like something is rusted, which is what we're going for, so that's good. So, all right, guys, so now we've done this part. We're gonna go to a miniature. We're gonna break out our Barren Black Tree that we did the what we do, the cloak on him. Yeah, this cloak right here. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna repeat this process. We're gonna make his sword here a little rusty. Okay, so I don't know, can we see the sword good? Hopefully we can. Let me try to get the light here a little better. Yeah, okay. So I've already painted his swords with metallics and shaded. If you're wondering how I did the sword here, we can cover that a separate time, but basically we did metallics, then we glazed a blue-black wash down on this side and up on this side. Then we edged it in silver, and then we added the little scratches by doing little bits of black, and then right underneath it to catch the light under the scratch, doing silver. Okay, so we'll cover that sometime too. That's a technique that I'm still mostly trying to make sure that I've got good down before I teach somebody. So what we're going to do here is we're going to focus on what if his sword has just been accumulating a little bit of rust. We're going to try not to go overboard. Like I said, that's something that you know, I like to make things rusty, I guess. So let's try to focus. We're going to get some down on his hilt in here. You know, down in here. Imagine that maybe it was leaning up against a wall, hilt down, and it was running down into this. So if anywhere, and then, you know, there's some, it's not clean otherwise. Oh, I'm too low. All right. So I said we've got some down in here, right? Yep. And then we're just going to put there we go. I think we can see that. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. So that's step number one. Alrighty, step number 2, let's take our Typhus Corrosion back. Okay. And we're gonna take some of this. This is one that we got to be real careful. This will just make everything go bad fast if we do too much here. So we're just gonna barely get some of this. And this. And shaking a little bit, guys. There we go. Okay. Trying not to go overboard, but I think I'm putting a little much on there. But for effect's sake, we'll call it good. Alrighty. So we're gonna take our Ryza rust now. I think I'm doing this in the same order. If not, it's not a big deal. Okay, so we're gonna get some of that off. Alrighty. Then we're gonna take, we're trying to hit mostly the same areas. We don't have to be super precise, but we do want to make sure that we get mostly the same areas. Try to imagine the areas that you do the most in where the rust might really accumulate. Like I said, we're imagining that he found this sword in the dungeon and it was leaning up against a wall for a while, you know, point up in this case, you know. Probably it makes more sense to do point down, but we've kind of already decided that. So really it's however you have envisioned the story. When you're painting, guys, you know, come up with a story of why you're painting it the way you are. Don't just be like, I'm gonna paint it this color and this color and this color because that's the color that it feel like it should be. Like, why are things the color? You know, why does he have this beat up cloak? Well, he's been through some stuff, you know, that's maybe his family cloak or something. All right, so we got some of this flesh wash down here still. So that's this guy. Secret weapon, that's the kind of yellowish green one. And we're gonna take and we're just gonna dab some of this on. And dab some of this on. And you can see here, we're starting to build that up pretty good now. He's looking pretty beat up. This is probably a bit much for this sword, but we're gonna roll with it because I want to. That's why. All right, so we're about to do the actual iron now, okay? We don't want to use the brush that we've been doing wet things, otherwise we'll be doing wet powder, which is fine. It's just not what we want for this particular thing. I will cover a whole thing on powders at some point, but weathering powders are beautiful if you've never used them. They can add real subtle things, or you can go real heavy. There's just a lot of things you can do, but right now we're trying to be fairly subtle here. Okay, yeah, okay. So you can see, guys, he's looking pretty corroded there. Okay. Okay. Alrighty, and then I think our last step here, a little bit of this rust wash. Okay, so we're gonna take a little bit of this guy, and we're just gonna, you know, notice I've been dabbing the brush off on the paper towel because what we don't want to do is flood this. If we suddenly flooded that, no, that would not look good. All right. So now what we've done is we've added all that. We've lost a little bit of the edge of our sword. We're going to go ahead and add that back. So we're going to take a little bit of the silver here. You know, it's rusty, but we're going to pretend like it's still a little bit of sharp here. Okay. So we're going to take a little bit of the silver. We're going to dab it off. This is Silver Metallics by Vallejo Metal Color. Okay. And we're going to run this right along the edge here. Oh, a little too much there. We're going to run that. Make sure we catch just the edge here. Just the edge here. And then we're going to try to catch the center line here. Okay. If you've got a real well-defined weapon, then you can catch the center line if you're really good. Alrighty, so yeah. Alright, so yeah, you can see we've got ourselves a pretty good and rusted weapon. So what we're going to do is we're going to add back in these scratches. We're going to come here and we're going to add in this guy. We're going to add in this guy right here, add in this guy right here. Okay, so right now that doesn't really look like anything. That looks like just some random lines there. What we're going to do is we're going to take some black, a little bit of black, and we're going to add these scratches back in. So scratches are reflected under the scratch. So we're just taking black here, nothing fancy. So since it's reflected under, we want to put the black over this over. So trying to do this on camera is not fun, guys, so you'll have to excuse me. The light's getting in my way here. Yeah, there we go. And there we go, and there we go. So you can see now, look at that. All of a sudden it looks like he's got scratches and a nice super rusty sword. Like I said, we probably overdid that sword. Like that sword has been out in the weather for a long time. So I would say I probably broke rule number 3 there. Less is more sometimes. But that's okay, it's good for showing the technique. So maybe in the future, you know, focus just on fewer areas. But, you know, for showing the weathering, it looks pretty rusty, guys. All right, thanks a lot. So remember, there's 3 points. Number 1, you're going to need a variety of colors. You know, you can look at everything we did, and you can see that it never really came together until the very last step. So the more you use, the better. You're going to want something with some texture. You're going to want reds. You're going to want yellow greens. You're going to want a little bit of everything, guys. All right, so that was number 1. Number 2, you're going to want to stipple it on. Don't use brush strokes. Don't use a good brush. Take an old beat up brush like our old war colors number 2 here, and stipple it on. Number 3, sometimes less is more. You can see we probably overdid this. His whole sword looks like it's been through the rust bucket. This is a great sword for a skeleton, probably. You know, that's a great thing to add for that. For this guy, if I repaint this, I'll probably mostly keep this, but just add some silver back in here. So alrighty guys, well thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.